ये दर्द रहेगा बन के दवा तुम सब्र करो वक्त आने दो.
Brilliant, Jazakumullah. Moving on, mashallah, doing very well going through each segment. We have with us Hamza again. This comes every bi-weekly onto our Khudam nights. Ji Hamza. Hamza, how you been? How's everything going in Newcastle?
I'm alright, Manubisal. I just got a exam on Tuesday, so just been preparing for that really. But it's
Mashallah.
alright. It's alright, alhamdulillah.
Have the hairdressers opened up in Newcastle yet? Oh, they're still
2
closed.
weeks, man. 2 weeks. 12th of April, I think, or 13th of April.
Clean shave, waiting for it.
Oi, oi, oi. Haircut, therefore.
Good. Do you tell us what we're studying today, Hamza?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So today, I think 4 weeks ago we spoke about Leihram, and I know in between we talked about the Muslim skeptic, but I just wanted to come back to another quite infamous opponent of the Prophet Islam, who was Alexander Dowie, just because it links in quite well with Leihram, and it was a similar time frame, the end of the 1800s to the early 1900s. So essentially, he was a Christian preacher who, obviously, we know the Prophet Islam, his claim was also to be the second coming of Hazrat Isa Islam, and Alexander Dowie also claimed a similar thing. So just a bit of background on him. So initially, he was a Scotsman, and he migrated to Australia very early on in the late 1870s, basically. Sorry, the early 1870s. Initially, quite interestingly, he had a reputation of being a healer, so healing different types of ailments and whatnot. And he then moved to the US, and he became quite well known for this concept of being a healer of different ailments of the body. And then following on from the success of all of these publications, he began preaching about Christianity, because that was obviously his initial occupation as a cleric. And because of linking to his healing, he became very popular in the US. And then following on from that popularity, towards the end of the 1896, he actually found his own sect in Christian Catholicism. Alongside that, again, he claimed to be the second coming of Hazrat Isa alayhi Islam, who, again, for those Americans and those people in Western Europe at that time who were interested in religion, they were very inclined towards awaiting for the second coming of this Messiah. And then as his popularity grew, he also became very, very wealthy, of acquiring the sort of wealth equivalent of millions in that time. Because of that wealth, he purchased land in Illinois in America, and he built it and he called it the Zion City, which was just a town dedicated to his followers, his supporters, and his beliefs. So these are the main claims just here. He claimed to be Jesus. He claimed obviously that Hazrat Isa alayhi Islam was God, and that he called himself the apostle or the companion or the follower of Hazrat Isa alayhi Islam. And there's a prophecy in Deuteronomy, chapter 18:15. I haven't got it. I should have got it actually, but he's basically claimed that he came to fulfill that prophecy, and he's the fulfillment of what's stated in there. He also claimed to be the Elijah and the apostle of the age. Of that time. Then as he grew in influence, he also used his quite public and quite harsh views on Islam and the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So this is just an extract from some of his writings. I think of the falsehood of Muhammad with great contempt. If I were to accept those falsehoods, I would have to believe that in this gathering and in any part of God's earth, there is no single woman who possesses an immortal soul. I would have to acknowledge that you women are but wild animals, which can be used for an hour a day as playthings, and that you have no eternal existence, and that when those who are dominated by bestial passions have satisfied their lusts with you, you would die the death of dogs. This will be your end. This is the religion of Muhammad. So basically, he's accusing the Holy Prophet ﷺ and Muslims of considering women as less than human and only as sort of devices for our lustful our passions, basically. And this is a reference from where it was his publication, The Leaves of Healing. That's where he stated these things. Then following on from quite frequent speeches like this, he published a prophecy in 1902, warning all Muslims that if they didn't accept Christianity, they would meet with death and destruction. And then, obviously, upon hearing these prophecies, the Prophet Islam gave his own response in the Review of Religions, again, the early 1900s. And he states, recently, there's appeared in the United States of America a man apostle of Jesus, whose name is Dowie. He claims that Jesus, in his capacity as God, has sent him into this world to invite people to the doctrine that there's no God besides Jesus. And then he goes on to say that Dowie shouldn't be worried about about destroying all Muslims if he is true in his beliefs about Jesus. And then he issues a further challenge where he says there's a very easy way of determining whether Dowie's God is true or if the God of Islam is true. That way is that Dowie needs not repeatedly announce that he's going to destroy all Muslims or that he wants all Muslims to be destroyed. He should keep me alone in his mind and should pray that of the two of us, the one who is false may die before the other. Dowie believes in Jesus' God, and I consider him a humble creature and a prophet. The matter in issue is which of us two is in the right. So Mr. Dowie should publish this prayer and this challenge, which should bear the testimony of at least 1,000 persons. When the issue of the paper that contains the announcement reaches me, I too will pray accordingly and shall append to this prayer the testimony of 1,000 persons, if God so wills. So he's issuing that challenge of a prayer duel or a mubahala. He mentions the Prophet ﷺ briefly about God's jealousy, that he's been inclined to take up the challenge, the Prophet ﷺ, because obviously Dowie is claiming that Hazrat Isa ﷺ is God, and God, one of his attributes is of that jealousy, that righteous jealousy, to say, no, this is incorrect, and Prophet ﷺ is trying to show the truthfulness of Allah and of Islam through this challenge, through response to this challenge. And again, this is just a summary of it. So again, there's no need to destroy all the Muslims. It can just be between Dowie and Prophet ﷺ. And then if Dowie doesn't respond to the challenge and he dies before the Prophet ﷺ, this would be a sign for all the people of America that he's false. And the only condition is that the death of either person should be brought on by an illness or some form of disease, but not by murder or by human hands. And Dowie would be given 3 months to respond to this challenge. A bit longer here, but I think it's just important to read it out because it gives a good idea of what was going on. So the method I propose that Mr. Dowie should come into the field against me with the permission of his false God. I am an old man of more than 66 years of age. I suffer from diabetes, dysentery, migraine, deficiency of blood. I realize, however, that my life depends not upon the condition of my health, but on the command of my God. If the false God of Mr. Dowie possesses any power, he will certainly permit him to come forth against me. If instead of destruction of all Muslims, Mr. Dowie's purpose can be served by my death alone, he will have established a great sign, in consequence of which millions of people will acknowledge the Son of Mary as God and will believe in Dowie as an apostle or a prophet. So again, essentially saying, this can be between me and you, it doesn't have to involve anyone else, and our beliefs can show who is in the right and who is in the wrong. And this was also published quite widely in American newspapers and journals at that time. One of those journals went on to say this is a contest between an English versus an Arabic person in a prayer duel, so to speak. And this is just a summary of that contest. Essentially saying, in brief, the Mirza has written to Dowie, you are the leader of a community. I too have several followers. The decision as to who is from God can be easily sought. Each of us should pray that whoever is false, God should take him away in the lifetime of the other. The one whose prayer is heard shall be considered from the true God. This indeed is the most reasonable and just option. So even the media at the time agreed this is fair and reasonable to decide who is truthful. Then Dowie didn't respond to any of these challenges. And then in February 1903, he, ignoring sort of what Prophet ﷺ said, he went on to say, I pray to God that Islam should soon disappear from the world. Oh God, accept this prayer of mine. Oh God, destroy Islam. And that was early 1903. Then Prophet ﷺ, again, disregarding the fact that he hasn't taken up the challenge, he says whether Dowie accepts the challenge expressly or impliedly, he will depart this life with great sorrow and torment within the life of the Prophet ﷺ. So whether he publishes it outwardly or he expresses it in his own heart subtly, either way, the doom or the impending doom will come to Alexander Dowie, is basically what he's saying. Again, he didn't respond, and then he gave 7 more months to await a response from Alexander Dowie. But again, either way, he says the world shall soon see the end of the contest and who is truthful and who is false. And then just a reminder here that I put, around this time, Prophet ﷺ was around in his late 60s, 70s, and Dowie was about 20 years his junior. Then he also says that if he doesn't respond at all, if he doesn't say anything, then America and Western Europe can be a witness that he sort of cowered away from the contest, that he didn't want to respond, and that he sort of hid away from it, showing through his actions or his lack of actions, his defeat in relation to who's truthful. And then he goes on to say, this is his last sort of statement on it from Prophet Islam. Be sure, therefore, that a calamity will most certainly befall this Zion very soon. And then finally, towards the end of that year, Dowie would reply, and he said, there is a Muhammadan Messiah in India who has repeatedly written to me that Jesus Christ lies buried in Kashmir, and people ask me why I do not send him the necessary reply. Do you imagine that I should reply to such gnats and flies? If I were to put my foot on them, I would trample them to death. The fact is that I merely give them a chance to fly away and survive. So though not expressly, Dowie implied that his religion was truthful and the Prophet ﷺ and his beliefs are all false. So it's an implied acceptance that you are wrong and I am right. So this was enough for the Prophet ﷺ to say, you've accepted the challenge in an implied way rather than an outward way. And then as soon as he made this testimony, when was it again? At the end of 1903, that's when you start to see the decline of Alexander Dowie. And it's quite sad actually, because even though he said all these things about Islam, you still feel sorry for him, to be honest. So his health grew really bad. His followers began to question him and he started encountering financial difficulties. Imagine this is a person at the time who's the equivalent of a millionaire, like literally someone like Bill Gates now. That's the sort of wealth that he had. And then from claiming he would trample them to death with his feet, Dowie couldn't even rest them. So he started getting a lot of different illnesses. He had severe strokes and paralysis 2 years later in October and December 1905. He even went to different countries to search for a cure, but there was no real solution to this paralysis. Eventually, Dowie's followers found out all his hidden weaknesses and his sins, so to speak. He was a heavy drinker, almost like an alcoholic, and it had been misappropriated, and he'd been taking funds and allocating them in a wrongful manner. I'm not exactly sure how, but he'd basically be doing some wrongful things with the money that the Zion organization had. And because of this, his followers sort of took him away from his role as the leader or person in charge. His wife and his children, unfortunately, they left him. And he spent the rest of his life in a lot of pain, both physically and mentally. And he died in March 1907, alone and in a very sad manner, really. And then even at the time of Dowie's death, an American newspaper, quite a few of them had followed the dialogue between the Prophet ﷺ and Dowie. And they stated the following. This is from the Boston Herald, which is quite a famous newspaper as well. Dowie died a miserable death with the Zion city torn and frayed by internal dissensions. So all of that hard work that he'd taken to make that town, that city of Zion, had sort of broken away due to internal disputes and arguments and whatnot. So critics of the Prophet ﷺ may say that he didn't clearly state that, he did say that he would die in the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ. He didn't say exactly when. He didn't put like a time frame on it, so to speak. But then sort of an objective viewpoint would be from the American newspapers of the time again, who witnessed, again, all the dialogue between the two. And it stated here, the Ghardian man predicted that if Dowie accepted the challenge, he shall leave the world before his eyes with great sorrow and torment. If Dowie declined, the Mirza said, the end would only be deferred. Death awaited him just the same, and calamity will soon overtake Zion. This was a grand prophecy. Zion would fall and Dowie would die before Ahmed. It appeared to be a risky step for the Messiah to defy the restored Elijah to an endured test, for the challenger was 15 years the older man of the two, and probabilities in the land of plague and famines were against the survivor, but he won out. Again, showing Prophet Islam's health, the environment at the time, a lot of people were dying from illnesses, from plague, from famine. So all the odds were stacked against the Prophet Islam, but in spite of this, he proved to be the truthful one. And this again is from another American journal, just saying that the Prophet Islam and the Jamaat at the time, they can be excused for taking credit for the accuracy of the prophecy of the Prophet ﷺ. It's understandable that we believe that he was truthful, basically, as Dowie would die very soon after making that statement in February 1903. So just there's a lot more to it, but that's like the key points, really. So again, Jazakallah, thank you for listening.
Jazakallah Hamza, mashallah. A lot of effort gone into that. You can see, if you guys want to watch it again, we have the recording, so watch it back, because there's a lot of information there. And as you know, as Alexander Dowie was one of the staunch enemies of Hazrat Muslim Islam, but we've captured most of it in that short presentation. Jazakallah Hamza, did you learn anything new while you were making that, or mentioned quite a few times in his Muslim's books? The quote.
I didn't know that he claimed to be Elijah. I didn't know that. I didn't know he claimed to be Elijah. I didn't know the exact ins and outs of the prophecy. I just knew it on the surface level. I didn't know in that much detail, to be honest.
And the Zion city, isn't that still existing?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I can search it up, but I'm not sure, to be honest.
Yeah, have a look at that, because I know
All right.
Zionism still exists.
Oh, Zionism, yeah, is, but I think his land in Illinois, I don't know if that's still associated. Zionism is still a thing, yeah. But that's more related to the Jewish religion, isn't it? I'm pretty sure. Not his perspective from Christianity, I don't think. I think his perspective on it, I'm not sure that's still in existence today.
Yeah, it'd be good to look into that. Let us know if you find anything on that. Jazakallah, Hamza. Appreciate it. Brilliant. We'll go to